Hey everyone, it's Drake back with Learn Log Bait. Hope you guys are having an awesome day. We've got a ton of material to get through, so I'll get straight to the point. Here's the timestamps of the different topics I'm going to be covering, and they're also in the description below. Tips 1 through 9 are going to be a quick upgrade order because it's one of the most common questions I get. First, upgrade your Goblin Barrel. It's your win condition and one of 2 evolutions. Enough said. Upgrade your Goblin Gang second. It dies to overleveled Zap, which just makes it a lower DPS Skarmy at that point. Next, upgrade your Log because underleveled Log doesn't kill Princess or Dark Goblin anymore, which is a huge problem because Princess counters Log Bait. More on that later. By the way, Barrel, Gang, and Log obviously have different rarities, so this is just assuming that you have limited gold and are trying to use your gold like wisely. Fourth, upgrade your Knight. It's your most important defensive card, but not as high priority as the other 3 because you can still get away with underleveled Knight if your placements are good enough. Next, upgrade your buildings. So we're talking Cannon, Tesla, or Inferno Tower. These are mainly the most important for Hog Rider interactions, but if you're going to prioritize upgrading your building last, make sure it's Inferno Tower because it still does pretty well underleveled. Next, upgrade your Dark Goblin. If you run the Dark Goblin variation, it 2-shots stuff like Firecracker, but not when it's underleveled. The 7th card you upgrade should be Ice Spirit. You need this leveled up to tank for Evil Barrel, otherwise it won't make it to the tower against Princess Tower and Royal Chef. Number 8 is Princess. Her levels don't really affect her utility, so definitely prioritize your legendary wild shards on Log over Princess. And upgrade your Rocket last. You're not running a Drill or Minor Rocket cycle deck, so it's pretty low priority. I'll get into the whole Dark Goblin versus Rocket debate later. Tips 10 through 17 are going to cover Princess because I guess the mark of a good Log Bait player is when you know how to Princess the bridge versus when you know how to Princess in the back. So tip number 10 is use Ice Spirit to push Princess up to get a tower lock. It's so fast they physically can't react to it in time. A good rule of thumb is to play your Princess on the outer edge tile because it bypasses more things. Here's an example of a middle bridge Tesla where the Princess placement matters. And then here's an example of troops being played 3, 4, and 5 tiles from the King Tower. Notice which point the Princess doesn't lock onto the tower. You can Goblin Barrel in front, then Princess at the bridge to clip the tower and the Skarmy if you know they're going to use it. If they have a building sitting 4 tiles from the bridge, you can use Ice Spirit or Knight, then immediately Princess on the same tile to bypass the building and get a tower lock. Yes, this actually matters and I did it in a real game in Ultimate Champion. Bar Barrel doesn't actually counter Princess if you react quickly enough to protect her. Bar Barrel is run in Balloon, Royal Giant, Graveyard, Golem, and Recruits decks. A good rule of thumb is to play Princess in the back when it's hard for them to take it out and spam her at the bridge against cycle decks. This is because Princess isn't that useful for defense in single elixir against cycle decks. She really only gets useful when you can stack Princesses in double elixir. I'll talk more about that later. Never Princess bridge against bridge spam or recruits. Honestly, whenever you Princess at the bridge, you have to have some sense of how they're going to defend her and use judgment off of that. For example, you don't want to have to defend a full health Lumberjack just for 200 damage on the tower with Princess. The second most important thing to know, besides Princess, is Goblin Barrel, so we're going to cover that. Stop throwing tricky barrels because better players can read it and get positive elixir trades off of it. They can even activate King Tower with skeletons, which is the last thing you want as a Log Bait player. Don't be afraid to use Barrel defensively because you still have to cycle to it to get your Evo anyways. In some bridge spam matchups, you might even have to use it because your cycle can get so awkward. I'm making a matchup specific guide, so like 101 tips, but like for specific matchups, so stay tuned for that. It's gonna be another video though, obviously. Barrel 1 tile to the right or left to avoid Bar Barrel. The extra damage from the Goblin stabs add up and in some cases win you games. Good players can read it most of the time, but as Elixir picks up, even they can't track it perfectly every time because they're focused on other things. The Princess Tower targets the inside Goblin first, so usually players will counter Barrel with a troop on the outer edge. So you can Barrel on the inside tile. This works great against stuff like Gang, Guards, Ice Wizard, and Electro Wizard. You can Barrel in the front or back against stuff like Valk. Sometimes they'll even play it to the side, but at that point it's just gambling. For example, if you have a Knight walking up, they'll probably want a Valk in front, so you can Barrel in the back. Barrel in the corner in single elixir until you know they don't have Tornado, because again, they can activate King Tower, and it's really hard to get damage from there. If you know they have an E-Spirit in hand, try not to Evil Barrel because it full counters the decoy, and it's a waste of your win condition. This is partly why Log Bait struggles so much against Expo, Royal Giant, and Hog Earthquake. Generally, you're supposed to send the real Barrel to the higher HP tower for dual lane pressure because opponents will almost always defend their weaker tower, but it's not a hard rule, and don't be afraid to play some mind games with it. Next up is Dark Goblin. This is my favorite card, and it single-handedly put my channel on the map. Speaking of which, if you're enjoying this content, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow this channel into the one-stop shop for Log Bait content of all skill levels, and every subscriber counts. I really appreciate it. You can snipe any building 3 tiles from the bridge or less. For spawners 4 tiles from the bridge, you have to play it directly across from it, otherwise it won't work. Spawners are any building that spawns a troop, so Goblin Cage, Hut, Tombstone, and so forth. For defensive buildings, aka Cannon, Bomb Tower, Inferno Tower, and stuff, it's trickier. If it's 4 tiles from the bridge, you have to play it on the side that the building is closer to the Princess Tower, and you have to play on the inside tile so the Dark Goblin is still in sniping range, but safe from the Princess Tower. Here's a side-by-side example of inside tile mattering, because the Princess Tower will lock onto the Dark Goblin if you don't play it right. Tesla is a special case. It has to be in the middle and 3 tiles from the river, and you have the Dark Goblin on the outer tile like Princess to bypass it. It doesn't work 2 tiles from the river. So now that we covered Dark Goblin, we have to cover Rocket because you're typically only going to run Rocket or Dark Goblin, not both. More on that later. Generally, it's not a great idea to Rocket the tower in single elixir, even if they just played a Sparky. You need to understand that a card played in the back usually means they just hit 10 elixir. You can use that to figure out if you're up or down on elixir. So if it's early in the game and you just hit 8 elixir and they play a Sparky in the back, you're already down 2, right? So rocketing that Sparky could sell the match even if it's like a free 500 damage in theory. In hindsight, you'd rather save that Rocket to hit their tank and the Sparky while still having enough elixir to defend. Sure, you don't get that 500 damage, but at least you're still alive. And also the same concept applies to Witch, Executioner, Wizard, Bowler, Musketeer, and so many more 4 elixir cards. But here the restrictions become even tighter because they're cheaper. Also Furnace is included in that category, because I know Furnace is super annoying to deal with log bait. If it's double elixir and you need damage, at this point you know what they have, so anything 3 elixir and up is fair game, if and only if you don't need rockets to defend their pushes. So mainly against cycle decks, I would say. And also it should be sudden death, because you're only going to be going for 1 tower in sudden death, so rocketing the tower makes more sense in sudden death. Now let's talk Expo. In single elixir, if they play a defensive bow, you can get a free rocket on their tower. That's because at this point in the game, they can't generate elixir fast enough to build a good push and also outcycle you. But against offensive expos, always rocket first and then play your Ice Spirit or Knight to tank so you can cycle back to rocket quicker. At a certain point in sudden death, you'll need to rocket their tower and get a prediction on their expo immediately with a building or keep stalling. Against minor control decks, you can safely send a naked rocket in double elixir, especially if they play a naked Tesla. It's a 2 elixir rocket essentially. It's already hard to break through their defense because they cycle quickly, and these matchups always go the full 5 minutes. And against any cycle deck in triple elixir, just spam naked rockets when you know you can handle their pushes. Now we're going to talk about Goblin Gang. You can fully counter Baby Dragon if you play your Goblin Gang on the corner tile like this. You can also fully counter Goblin Barrel with this placement if you react quickly enough. If you know their cycle, Goblin Gang middle is super good when you princess to the bridge if they try to cannon or firecracker it. It's super aggressive though, so don't do it unless you actually know their hand. You can also fully counter Mega Knight with a Goblin Gang in the middle, but it has to be like a solo Mega Knight, if that makes sense. Next up is Ice Spirit. So when you Evo Barrel, wait just a split second before playing your Ice Spirit at the bridge so that the tower targets it for longer. Here's the before and after damage. You can see at tournament standard that delaying the Ice Spirit gets about 200 more damage versus when you barrel then Ice Spirit instantly. This actually matters because it adds up over time. Alternatively, if you have barrel as your next card coming up, play your Ice Spirit in the middle and then immediately go Evo Barrel. The delay is also perfectly timed here, but just be aware that it gives them more time to react with a bridge block to make your dummy barrel useless, because nothing's going to be tanking for it. And obviously none of this applies to Duchess and Cannoneer because they one-shot Spirit. You can counter Skeleton Barrel with Ice Spirit, but the timing is super tricky. You can also activate King Tower on a Mega Knight with Ice Spirit. For this example, just pretend that these skeletons that I played are like a Princess, Dark Goblin, or a Cannon. You can also fully counter Mega Knight with Knight with this placement. Speaking of Knight, never ever let Prince charge onto your Knight. Always stop it with an Ice Spirit or Gang. If they don't have a direct way to kill your barrel and it's a 2-tower situation, barrel the Knight pocket last second to get damage. So for log tips, you can counter Goblin Barrel and Princess with a 3-for-6 trade by locking 1 tile up and Ice Spiriting the bottom Goblin. If it's sudden death and you're scraping for tower connections, track their cycle and Princess, then pre-log for their Swarm. It works on guards if you have Ice Spirit to follow up with log too. Most of the time, even good players will panic and try to wipe Princess off the board as soon as possible. Alright, this is a pretty important topic. We're gonna talk about Evos. So one of the most common questions I get is what to use your Evo shards on. I think the obvious answer is you need Evo Goblin Barrel for log bait because Goblin Barrel itself is way too easy to counter nowadays. It completely unlocks the full potential of your offense. And then from here, you have 4 options. I'll start with Knight, because if you want to be classic, run Knight, but keep in mind, it's going to be super hard to apply pressure. Evo Knight is great against stuff like Expo or Archer Queen, but other than that, the main purpose of Knight in log bait is a 3 elixir tank that has really solid DPS, and Evo Knight can't be attacking for the Evo to actually work. It's great in graveyard decks because it soaks up tower shots, but for the purposes of log bait, I feel like there are better Evos. Evo Cannon is great if you hate losing to recruits. It's also great for sniping things like Firecracker, Princess, or Dark Goblin, Evo Archers, Bats, and defensive Goblin Gangs. The only issue is it's a little awkward to cycle to if you're in matchups that require Cannon a lot, like Hog Cycle. Evo Ice Spirit is probably the highest skill variant in log bait, and it's pretty good on defense, but I don't think it's as good as Evo Dark Goblin. Plus, when you pair it with Evo Barrel on offense, all they have to do is block the Evo Ice Spirit before it hits the tower, and it's basically useless. So Evo Ice is probably just mainly good for defense, I would say. It can shut down entire pushes. Evo Dark Goblin is still more than good enough after the poison nerf, and it can shred big pushes. This one is my personal favorite. You can use Evo Valk, but I would only recommend her with Hypno deck or Hyper variants, which I'll cover later. Alright, we're on to buildings. So this is going to be tips 56 through 79. It's a big one. We're going to start with Cannon. The standard 4-3 position pulls big tanks. 1 tile over counters Hog Rider, and then you can put it middle at the bridge against Balloon. Against 2.6 Hog Cycle, if you want to avoid Fireball, you can put it 2 tiles from the bridge, but be careful because Musketeer can snipe anything 3 tiles from the bridge or less. For Hog Earthquake, you'll need to react quickly to push the Hog towards the anti-Earthquake position. So basically the same like placement as Balloon, but 1 tile over, and the Hog won't run towards it on its own. You have to push it with like an Ice Spirit, Knight, or Goblin Gang. Also, this placement can avoid Earthquake sometimes, but I wouldn't rely on it because they can easily just shift their Earthquake over, and like even if they don't Earthquake, Hog just shreds it, and you'll still have to defend it. Moving on from Hog Rider, be careful of Balloon getting pushed by Bats. You can play Cannon like 1 tile over and it'll still pull the Balloon. If they Lava Hound in the back, you can cycle 2 cannons in these positions to activate King Tower with Balloon. Speaking of Lava Hound, you can also cannon up high so the Balloon flies past the Hound, and it's a lot easier to defend. Cannon also fully counters Goblin Drill in the standard front placement. Against Dark Goblin, treat it like a Golem and it'll be range of the Princess Tower. Obviously, you already know this if you watched the Dark Goblin section of the video, but yeah. Against Minor Wall Breakers, place your cannon near your Princess Tower to tank the breakers while getting some value on the Minor. Without a Minor, you can also counter breakers while preserving your cannon health if you react quick enough. We're done talking about cannon. Let's move on to Tesla. You can activate King Tower against Bowler with a log and a Tesla. You can avoid Earthquake and Lightning with any of these 3 placements, and when cycling a naked Tesla, go 2 tiles from the river because it pulls Hog. If you cycle Tesla naked 3 tiles from the river, Hog Rider's just gonna run past it. But keep in mind, the other tower won't help out on a 2 tile Tesla. It will at 3. The same thing applies to Dark Goblin bypassing a 3 tile Tesla, but it won't at 2 tiles. And then this is like kind of a repeat tip, but in case you didn't watch the Princess section, watch out for Princess because if they play to the side, a middle Tesla won't pop up. It will if they play it normally though. If you're playing Tesla reactively, 3 tiles from the river is a standard for things like Hog, Battle Ram, and Ram Rider because the other tower helps out. They also can't fireball it, but they can snipe it with Musketeer, going back to that tip with cannon against 2.6 Hog cycle. 4 tiles from the river is better for bigger tanks, but just keep in mind it's in fireball range. Place it here for balloon, but make sure you separate the lumberjack so it doesn't destroy your Tesla or rage up the balloon. We only have 3 tips for Inferno Tower because pretty much all of the placements with cannon and Inferno Tower are the same. The difference is you don't have to push Hog Riders towards the anti-earthquake position because Inferno Tower is tanky enough to survive Hog hits and earthquake. You should still play it in the anti-lightning spot in some situations though, because obviously lightning is a different spell from earthquake. Eye Tower right in front of your Princess Tower is also really good against Lava Hound. Alright, this is going to be like more of a discussion, so tips 80 through 90 is going to be the pros and cons of like deck choices you can make. So we're going to start with Goblin Gang versus guards. You won't get nearly as much offensive pressure with guards, but they can't be expelled on defense, which is a lot better than like gang. They're also really good in boss bandit metas because guards just do so well against boss bandit. And then obviously you don't have air defense with guards, but to be honest, if you're running Dark Goblin, your Spear Goblins for air defense don't really matter that much, if that makes sense. Alright, next up is the spirits. In general, Princess does well enough against splash, such as like bats, where E-Spirit doesn't matter that much. Plus they can get a king activation with E-Spirit, which is like I said, the last thing you want as a log bait player. Ice Spirit also freezes towers for longer and is better on offense. And before you say I forgot about Fire Spirit, I'll talk about that in Hyper Bait. Alright, here are the pros and cons of each building. For Tesla, I would only recommend Tesla if you're free to play and only have Evo Barrel and Evo Tesla when Supercell gifted everyone Evo Tesla. It shoots slower than cannon, costs more, it doesn't have the tank DPS ability the way Inferno does, and it's also harder to get placements right because of True Red, True Blue. If you ever messed up a middle Tesla, it's because of True Red, True Blue. But that's an entirely separate video. Yes, Tesla can target air, but Logbait is already really good against air cards. For cannon, you will get fried by Royal Giant Monk. There's just no way around it. It's so good against cycle decks like Hog and Drill, Recruits, and it's really good against Mega Knight if you're good enough. Also, it's pretty good against Ram Rider and Battle Ram. For Inferno, you're gonna lose to Recruits and Royal Hogs, and sometimes Hog Earthquake when you get outcycled and you don't know what you're doing. But again, I'm gonna be covering that in a later video for matchup specifics. I think cannon is better because yes, with Inferno you can defend Golem, RG, and Mega Knight easier, but cannon is way more dynamic. A really good pro of Inferno is it's another good zap bait card, but I guess there's like so many small spells in the meta that it doesn't really matter. Logbait definitely peaked in like 2018, 2019, like classic Logbait, because like the only 2 small spells that are running around were basically Log or Zap, and Inferno's a zap bait card, as I said. Alright, people ask me so much about should I choose Valkyrie or Knight. I just want to point out that Knight does basically everything a regular Valk does, but it's better and cheaper. And you also have Princess and Log for splash control, so regular Valk's splash function doesn't really matter. You pay 1 more elixir, and throughout the course of a game, that adds up. Think about it. If you play like Valk like 10 times in a game and you play Knight 10 times in a game, that's a 10 elixir difference. That's like 3 Goblin Barrels or 3 Princesses or any combination of cards you want to save. It's also common and Valk is rare, so it's harder to level up. And yeah, Knight is just can be used in any situation, whereas I feel like Valk, it's just that 1 elixir matters a lot more. Alright, tips 87 through 90 is going to be covering the Dark Goblin / Rocket debate. So the main use cases for Rocket is that it's way easier for Expo. You can finish off towers in overtime, and you can take out broken 5+ elixir cards. So for example, like when Supercell releases a broken Evo like Witch, Executioner, Evo E-Drag, you can take them out. But for Dark Goblin, it's 1 more spell bait card, and it completely changes your defense. So going back to how classic log bait is a lot harder, there were less small spells in the meta, and now it's almost impossible to break through with only Princess and Barrel as your bait cards. I would say Dark Goblin is a perfect complement to Princess because it's so annoying to deal with. If you protect both of them, you're just getting so much value without either of them crossing the bridge. Plus, like, Princess is like splash, and Dark Goblin is like higher DPS but like single targeting, and they kind of just go together like 2 peas in a pod. So at higher levels, nobody is clumping their troops together for a juicy rocket. Dark Goblin is half the price and will get at least a few shots off before being spelled off. Also, for the last thing, kind of going back to like what I said about 1 more spell bait card, Dark Goblin means like constant pressure. So going back to like how useful it is for taking out buildings, in that section I did earlier, if you keep it protected, it can get so much value, unlike Rocket, because Rocket has like a one-time use, obviously. But to settle the debate, I'd feel like Rocket is great for mid-ladder, because it's better against like unpredictable decks, but I feel like Rocket is way harder to play at higher levels. Like, it's hard to push to ultimate champion with Rocket. Alright, I had to put in a section for Hyperbait, even though my channel doesn't really cover Hyperbait that much. So yeah, if you just want to rage bait opponents, Hyperbait is by far the most annoying deck in the game to deal with. But my tip here is you won't get better at the game as much as you will by playing classic variants of Logbait, because offense is so cheap, easy, and unpunishable. What I mean by unpunishable is like you can't really build a counter push off of Hyperbait compared to Goblin Barrel, since they demand an immediate response. when we're talking about hyperbait, we talk about like a building that's not gonna cross the bridge, so you can't counter push it. And for example, like Goblin Barrel, if you throw a Goblin Barrel and like they, for example, Valk, that Valk is still being played like so far in the back for them that they're just gonna get elixir while the Valk is full health and walks up. So that's what I mean by it's easier to counter push. The one exception to like kind of getting better at log bait is Hypnos deck without a spell, because it forces you to actually get damage on tower since you have no direct way. And I would say Evil Valk is also a pretty high skill cap card. But yeah, a tip for wall breakers is against Cannoneer, only this tile gets a double connection. No other tile does. Wall breakers are also great for kiting stuff like Prince because they run at the same speeds. For Skeleton Barrel, always play on the outside tile because it's hard to pull with the building. And typically you want to run Fire Spirit along Ice Spirit when you're using Hyperbait because it's a 1 elixir fireball on the tower if ignored. Just keep in mind when it jumps and you're using on defense, a Prince or like a Dark Prince keeps charging. So don't get surprised by that. This is just some game plan tips, but in single elixir, you need to gather information. No aggressive moves in single elixir until you know at least 6 of their cards or you'll probably lose. And I get asked this a lot if I track cycle or elixir. I'm not the best player, so no, I don't, but I do try to count how many cards they've played, so I know like if they're playing like a weird deck, it's nice to know if they've already played all their 8 cards. So yeah, a card played twice means they've played at least 5. So if you see like Wall Breakers twice, they've already played at least 5 cards. And if they played Wall Breakers twice and you see a new card, that means 6 cards. So oh my god, I don't want to do like a 6-7 joke, but like don't do like an aggressive play until you know it's like 6 to 7 other cards. So once you know their deck, don't go Goblin Barrel until you have enough elixir to defend their win condition, even after the barrel is thrown. And the reason for this is because log bait is a chip deck, so like unlike beatdown or stuff like that, you don't win in one massive push, but you can definitely lose games if they win in one push, if that makes sense. So if they decide to ignore your barrel and go all in opposite lane and you don't have enough to defend, you basically just lost your tower and you're in a 2-tower situation, you can't come back, and you only got like a third of their tower if they ignored your Goblin Barrel. So the game plan shifts, obviously in double elixir and beyond. You're gonna want to stack and protect as many princesses as possible for map control, especially against cycle decks. And then this could be like a separate video, but you know what their counters are at this point, so you absolutely have to seize opportunities to be aggressive, or you'll just get overwhelmed because log bait isn't that great against built up pushes, especially in like triple elixir. But also, obviously it depends on the matchup, which I'm gonna make a separate video for. And then tip 101, we're at the end guys, it's for mid ladder. Here's probably the most important tip I could give to beginners for mid ladder. So if you take nothing else away from today's video, just remember this if you're a mid ladder player. Make their tank killers hit your swarm units and make your splash units hit your tank. So what I mean by that is play your knight first, then immediately go gang on the tank. This way the splasher will lock onto the knight while their tank hits the goblins. So if you have both cards selected and you hover, you can play one card after the other with the same finger just by double tapping, as long as you have both of them selected. So the order for this is like select your knight, hover it, then with your other like thumb select the Goblin Gang, and then just double tap with your thumb. So here's an example of the exact same situation, only the cards are played in the wrong order and you just burn 6 elixir. So for mid ladder, this works great because it's like P.E.K.K.A. Wizard, Prince Mega Knight, and so many other combinations of nonsense you'll run into. You'll use it like almost every game, even at higher levels. Anyways, we made it. In the next video of this series, I'll cover matchup specific log bait strategies, especially against like Hog, Earthquake, and Royal Recruits. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care everyone. Hope you have an awesome day.